Welcome to the channel and welcome to today's run through of all the latest Manchester United news and transfer updates, keeping you right up to date with everything. I'm Jamie. Before we get into it, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and let's jump straight into it. So let's kick off. Been some interesting transfer dealings going on overnight, which could end up having a direct impact on United. So let's go through a run of events here. So Morgan Gibbs-White to Tottenham. Here we go. Spurs trigger £60 million release clause after direct contact with Forest today. Medical booked and set to take place in 24 hours, as the Telegraph, Mike McGrath reported. Follows Kudos, deal done. Massive move for Spurs project. So Spurs have not just announced and signed Kudos, got his medical done. They've now also signed, I think he's actually done his medical and everything at the time of recording this video, Morgan Gibbs-White, in a massive egg on the face moment for United in terms of showing how quickly you can move in the transfer market. But the reason that's important is because David Ornstein then said that Nottingham Forest renew pursuit of Yohan Wissa, fresh offer made to Brentford for 28-year-old Congo striker. Bid falls under £25 million. Newcastle were prepared to pay in January window and considerably lower than Brentford's valuation in excess of £50 million. So that came from David Ornstein. Now, the reason that's important for us is because if you've been following the news over the last couple of days and watching previous videos, the report is that Brentford don't want to sell Wissa and Mbeumo in the same transfer window. And if Nottingham Forest now, who have money because they've just sold Elanga to Newcastle and Gibbs-White to Tottenham, if they move quickly for Wissa and we're still haggling over, the add-ons of a deal for Mbeumo, that could throw a spanner in the works for this deal. Alex Crook from TalkSport said that Wissa is pushing to leave Brentford this summer. Nottingham Forest are in talks. Tottenham are plotting a move, and Newcastle are keeping tabs. Brentford want £50 million, but clubs believe that fee can be negotiated down. So teams are making moves for Wissa, and we're still, I don't know what we're talking about with Brentford, but we've been having a conversation with them for coming up to 7 weeks now. I don't know why it takes that long to negotiate the price in a transfer deal, but that's massively concerning because, as we've seen already this window, these teams will move a lot quicker in the transfer window than we will, because we're still penny pinching over a few £1 million for the Mbeumo deal by all accounts. But yeah, big concern. Let's wait and see how it plays out, though. I mean, hopefully, if anything, this could give us a rocket up the backside to maybe push ahead with this deal and finally get something done, which would be good if we can get it done before Monday, because that's when Mbeumo's back from his holiday. That's when he's meant to be reporting to Brentford for training. So we've not technically lost out on anything then, if that's the case. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. This could be, it could be either a good or a bad thing for us. It could be good because it could force us to make a move and finally get this deal done, or it obviously could be bad because, they could move for Wissa and then Brentford we're just going to extend Mbeumo's contract, because I know some of you from comments on previous videos, just to be clear on this, yes, Mbeumo's got a year left on his contract, but Brentford have a +1 option, so they can trigger the +1 option, so technically he has 2 years left on his contract. So they're not in a position where we can just wait till next summer, because they'll do the +1 and then we'll still have to negotiate and pay a transfer fee and whatever for Mbeumo next year as well, just to be clear on that. And it's the same with Wissa, actually. Wissa's in exactly the same contract situation as Mbeumo. He's got a year left on his contract, but they do have a +1 option that they can trigger as well. So, it is what it is. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. Now let's go through all the rest of the latest regarding Mbeumo, and you'll pick up a common theme, I think, we're going through these. Quotes from Laurie Whitwell, Fabrizio Romano and Ben Jacobs. So Laurie Whitwell said the following on Mbeumo. He said, "I thought it was getting close. It feels like the bids that have been made and what Brentford want aren't that far apart. Clearly United have a position they want to maintain. Brentford have a position they want to maintain." So that's, negotiations. "I think we're at a stage with a club under Jim Ratcliffe where they're trying to negotiate hard for players and don't want to be seen losing out on this competition, shall we call it. Even if it's only a couple of million, then that's something that United don't want to feel like they are being forced into. Surely there's a middle ground in all of this." So that was Laurie Whitwell on the Stretford paddock, effectively saying that, we want to negotiate hard and rebuild the reputation, and even if it's just a couple of £1 million, they're not willing to bend down. And and make any not willing to compromise on that as well, which is annoying. But then also on the flip side, saying Brentford are pretty much doing the same thing as well. So yeah, that was interesting from Lloyd Whitwell. Fabrizio Romano said that on the Mbeumo deal, that Bryan Mbeumo deal for Manchester United is not called off. Bryan Mbeumo is not at war with Brentford. Manchester United want to pay what they believe is a correct fee. So directly saying that we're only willing to pay what we want for Mbeumo. Ben Jacobs saying that Brentford have this grandstanding 70 million number in relation to Bryan Mbeumo. However, Manchester United understand that this won't be the fee. Brentford are playing games as well. Man United would have to make the add-ons more achievable in order to do a deal for Bryan Mbeumo for up to 62.5 million. The feeling is that a third bid, if made, won't be significantly higher in the total package than the second. So, Ben Jacobs effectively saying that if we do make a third bid, it's not necessarily going to be above 62.5 million. It just might be that the add-ons are more achievable. And that seems to be the hold-up. And it's just really annoying and really frustrating, the whole situation regarding this deal. Because I think personally, right, there's two sides to this coin. One side is not bending over and throwing silly money at clubs, which is the right approach, in my opinion, when you're trying to rebuild our reputation, which is for massively overpaying on transfers for players. Then that's the right approach, to stand your ground and hold firm, because we have to rebuild that reputation. But on the other side, I don't think this is an Antony situation where we're being quoted like £85 million or £90 million or something ridiculous like that. We're only a few million quid apart from, the valuations, with some achievable add-ons away from a player who, in my opinion, is not massively being overpriced. I don't think 62 or 65 million pounds. When you look at what's going on in the market, with Jamie Gittins going for 50, Elanga going for 55, Gibbs White, we just mentioned, going for 60. I don't think 65 million pounds, if it is that figure, and we've bought Cunha for 62.5 million as well. I don't think that's an unrealistic price. But the argument then becomes, if we slightly overpay for Mbeumo, the next club then might expect us to slightly overpay for that one, and then so on and so forth. And in the end, you just end up wasting money like we have in the past. So it's one of these, isn't it? It's one of these. For me personally, I think paying that couple of £1 million in this occasion, because I don't think we're having our pants pulled down. I don't think the valuation is that bad for Mbeumo. Personally, and I don't think the couple of £1 million is going to be the end of the world in this particular case, because you're getting a very good Premier League proven player that ticks all of the boxes, that outside of, the big clubs, and probably arguably just behind Mo Salah, is one of the best wingers in the Premier League and is Premier League proven. I don't think that it's worth penny pinching over personally. I get the reasons why. I've just mentioned there, we need to rebuild our reputation and stuff. It just feels like we're being tight for the sake of being tight. That's the way I feel reading between the lines, because going off of those reports, Laurie Whitwell and Fabrizio Romano specifically saying that we want to pay, basically Romano said we want to pay what we want to pay, and Laurie Whitwell saying Sir Jim doesn't want to overpay as well. So, but give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments. I know some of you will have mixed views on that. That's going to be a bit, controversial, I think, from some of you going off the comments on previous videos, but that's just where I am. I don't necessarily think paying a couple £1 million above what we think Mbeumo's worth for a player of his quality. If you're talking 20 million quid, yeah, they can jog on, like we did with Branthwaite last summer when, Everton were asking for ridiculous money. We were like, yeah, see you later, bye. We're not paying £80 million for Jared Branthwaite. So I could get that. But I don't think it's one of those situations personally. But again, you'll have different opinions. Share them in the comments and we'll have a chat about them later. Now let's move on to the rest of the transfer news. So Alvaro Carreras to Real Madrid. Here we go. Verbal agreement in place between Real and Benfica. Real negotiated to pay €50 million in multiple instalments instead of one payment clause. As soon as Man United confirm they don't activate buyback clause, Alvaro will travel. So Romano confirming that Alvaro's going to Real Madrid. Interestingly, though, that the €50 million, because we've got between a 15 to 20% sell-on clause for Alvaro, which might be in a position where, we may get some money in, but because they're doing it in installments, we won't get that 20% up front. We'll get 20% of what Madrid pay Benfica each year. So it's going to be a couple of million, but it's not going to be, groundbreaking. But maybe that couple of million with that skin might be the difference between getting Mbeumo or not. But again, we'll have to wait and see how that happens. But so we're going to get a little bit of money from Alvaro from Real Madrid, but it's going to be in installments. From a PSR perspective, though, I think it helps us out this summer. And the same for Maxi Oyedele as well, who's on the verge of Strasbourg. The French are set to play a release clause of €6 million. Nearly half of that amount will go to Manchester United. So again, if they pay that up in full, we might get €3 million. Or if they're doing that in installments, we'll just get whatever the installments work out as money coming in again. But it's one of these where, these sell-on clauses might actually come back to help us out in this summer transfer window, but we'll need to see whether actually it does make a difference or not, because we still might be penny pinching at the end of that. But give us your thoughts in the comments. Now, this came from a French journalist that writes for, I think it's Footmatic, not sure of the credibility, saying that Manchester United's shortlist for their new striker remains unchanged. Victor Gyökeres, Victor Osimhen, Moise Kean, Hugo Ekitike remains financially out of reach. Man United are also looking at free agent market for strikers. I don't disagree with the names. We know we want Gyökeres. Osimhen's a pipe dream. He's going to Galatasaray. Kean name keeps getting mentioned as well. Ekitike, unless they drop the price from £85 million, I don't think we're going to go anywhere near that deal as well. But not exactly breaking news, I don't think, that one. So, but interestingly on Victor Gyökeres, though, so Record is saying that Victor Gyökeres and his camp have rejected 3 separate inquiries from Manchester United. Player only wants Arsenal. So Record is suggesting that United are making some inquiries to Victor Gyökeres' camp. And then Ojogo are saying that Manchester United could make a last-minute move. The Swedes' representatives know that they can salvage a deal via Manchester United, which may be what Varandes is hoping for in this impasse with Arsenal. So there's still, I think, difficulties with Arsenal trying to get this deal done over the fee and the gentleman's agreement and the asking price and structure of the payments and all that stuff regarding Sporting. But a Portuguese outlet's linking us with a move. Whether we've actually made the move or not, who knows? We need to take that, I think, record in, as we've seen with the whole, at the start of the transfer window, when it was like we've made a bid or a bid's been accepted by Arsenal and all this nonsense. They were a little bit hit and miss, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. But maybe we have reached out to see, what's going on with the situation, but I still can't see it. I think Arsenal get this deal over the line. They're just, it's just negotiation tactics where you hear one side's walking away and the other side's putting out this team's linked with this player. Just feels like a bit of negotiation tactics being played out in the Portuguese media personally, but we'll keep an eye on that one for you. And from one Victor to another, so Botafogo goalkeeper John Victor is a concrete target for Manchester United. He's prepared to be someone who's likely a backup, if not there to provide competition for the starting spot. So this seems like a viable option, John Victor, for to come in and go. That might be one to pay attention to. I think we've had multiple reports from Brazil, decent sources as well. I think the Muppetiers has mentioned that we're linked with him as well. Obviously Ben Jacobs, so could be something in this where he could be a viable option. He's got a relatively cheap release clause as well. I like the idea of that as initially a buy-in replacement, but I actually think he could be good enough to take Onana out the team as well. But we'll have to wait and see how that happens. But it's another link with Victor, who I actually think would be a decent shout, decent price as well. So yeah, we'll pay attention to that one. That's going to be later on in the transfer window though, because we're working on Mbeumo and exits, and that's it. That's all we're working on at the moment, according to the reports, which leads me nicely onto the exit. So Alejandro Garnacho has been given permission to join his teammates in training at Carrington amid an uncertain future. Now, that came from a South American journalist working for ESPN, I think, in South America, suggesting that Garnacho had been given permission to join his teammates at Carrington. The Muppeteers have said, though, there was no change in the situation around Garnacho. He plans to return to team training. He is able and welcome to return to Carrington and train, similar to Marcus Rashford. So the reports, I think, were a little bit over-egged, because the original one was suggesting that he's been back like in the first team squad and back training. But according to the Muppeteers, that's not the case. He's just allowed to come back to Carrington. That's maybe where he's flying from yesterday. I didn't realise that he wasn't back in the UK. So there's a picture that he put on his Instagram with him asleep on an aeroplane that brought you. Maybe he was still on his holiday and he was flying back to Manchester and he's going to go to Carrington to, because they can still use the facilities though. I know the headlines were stay away and, all these players have been told not to turn up ever. That's not actually what was in the report. The report was saying that they're not part of the first team group, but they're still there. They can still use the facilities at Carrington because they are still contractually, they're still Manchester United players. We can't just hoof them out. There's loads of probably legal reasons behind that. And I'm sure the FA would have something to say about that as well. So they're not going to be involved in the first team squad. So, but we'll wait and see what happens regarding that. And it's interesting, the Garnacho one, because that's one that's, gone a little bit quiet on the rumours regarding him. But maybe if Chelsea are selling Madueke to Arsenal, maybe they could make a move for Garnacho, but we'll see. We'll see about that. Let's move on to Rashford. So as revealed on the 6th of July, the priority for FC Barcelona is Marcus Rashford. Barca want to try again for Rashford and are prepared to go all in. A few weeks ago, Luis Diaz was priority number 1 as reported, but Liverpool rejected the approach. Rashford is now the clear number 1 target. Talks are ongoing. Green light from Hansi Flick was already given days ago. The 27-year-old winger is set to leave Manchester United. Now, that came from Florian Plettenberg. Florian Plettenberg, I would normally say take with a pinch of salt if it's anything outside of German news. However, Matteo, who is a good source, said that new contacts for Marcus Rashford are expected in the coming days, with Hansi Flick approving his arrival. Negotiations may advance in coming weeks. So Matteo, who is a credible source, works for Romano and stuff, suggesting that actually, yes, maybe these Barcelona Rashford links are starting to heat up because of Barcelona's lack of options, because obviously Nico Williams is staying at Athletic. By all accounts, Liverpool don't want to sell Diaz, although there has been a few reports that maybe Bayern Munich might have made a bid for Diaz. I don't follow that situation too much, so I don't know if that's been rejected or accepted or what, but that maybe Bayern Munich might be going for Diaz, or Liverpool don't want to sell Diaz, so that makes Rashford a viable option. Got to be a sale, though. If they've got the money to buy Nico Williams, none of this bollocks around, we've got no money, so we want a loan with an obligation or with an option to buy, and you pay up some of his wages. No, it's 40 million quid, because that's less than what you were going to buy Nico Williams for. And by all accounts, Rashford's going to want less money than what you were prepared to pay Nico Williams as well. So permanent sale for Barcelona, because I don't want to have our pants pulled down. If it's Rashford's dream move, he'll facilitate a deal. I just don't want to see a loan with an option to buy or anything like that. If it's a loan with an obligation to buy, maybe, but still then, they've got the money. Get the money from Barcelona if you're going to go there, in my opinion. But we'll have to wait and see whether they can do that or not, because again, we're not in a strong position when it comes to these sort of exits because of the contracts the players have got and the wages they're on, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Now, Simon Stone said that Real Betis began pre-season yesterday, but Antony is still in Brazil. The club hopes for a positive outcome in talks with United, but any deal must align with their financial situation. This still just infuriates me, the whole thing around this Antony deal. It's just really winding me up because, they've signed other players as well before Antony as well. So they've bought 2 players, I think, since the transfer window opened, and yet they're still claiming that they're skint and they can't afford the money for Antony. I think it's just a joke. I want to obviously remove Antony from the team and stuff, but actually, it just infuriates me, this deal. I don't know why we're facilitating a deal for the club that can't afford him and can't pay his wages when there's other teams out there that potentially can. But, it is what it is. Give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments. Now, Jadon Sancho entourage had a positive meeting with Ruben Amorim's side earlier this week. Manchester United have reached a basic agreement with Juventus for around 20 million euros, so 5 million less than quoted by Corella Della Sport. Sancho also agreed the Italian club's salary offer of 6 million euros per year. The tug of war continues between the winger and United over a severance package, and Sancho believes it can be less than 5 million euros. So La Stampa via Sport Witness suggesting, because the rumours are around, I think, I don't know the credibility, but they've got a large following, so I think they're a fairly decent outlet. I kind of say we know the situation with Sancho, if you've been following and watching previous videos, is that I think the basis of a deal are there. Maybe it is just working out that, but we still don't know if Juventus are going to pull the trigger on this deal. We don't know whether they're actually going to make a move for Sancho. I think they're lining up a deal just in case. They know the cost, they know the salary, by all accounts, according to that reports, which is good. If they do make a move and they buy him for 20, because we want 25, or we were going to get 25 from Chelsea for Sancho, maybe we do use that 5 million quid that we got from Chelsea for the cancellation of his obligation to buy. Maybe we do just use that to pay him off and be gone and move on with our lives. That's probably a realistic option, because the alternative is what we loan him out for another season, pay half of his wages, and then he walks away for free. Makes no sense. So that 5 million we got from Chelsea, maybe we do just hand it to Sancho and say, yeah, piss off, take it and go fight, go enjoy yourself in Juventus as a way out of this situation. But again, we'll need to wait and see if Juventus do make an official approach, because we don't know. Romano is saying, look, there's no official bid or anything yet been made, but we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see what happens. So there's news coming out just at the time of recording. United have not handed Alejandro Garnacho permission to return to training. Their medical and rehabilitation facilities will remain available should he wish to utilise them, and remote support will continue, but he is still expected to leave this summer. That came from Rich Fay. That's literally just come out at the time of recording this video as well, so another decent source. Suggesting the same thing as what the Muppeteers were saying. He can use the facilities and he can come back to Carrington, but he's not back in the first team. That was being originally reported by the ESPN journalist, but that is what it is. Now, to finish on, we have got another contender for bullshit transfer story of the window. This might actually take the lead at the moment. At the moment, it's Rudy Giletti on day one saying that Man United were interested in Rafael Leao. That is so far bullshit transfer story of the window, and I think we've got a beauty here. We've got a contender. So Real Madrid have rejected a shock £78 million bid from Manchester United for Tchouameni, according to reports. According to Spanish journalist Eduardo Inda, Real Madrid have turned down Man United's surprise move for the 25-year-old. Now, that came from The Sun, but that journalist actually, I did some digging, did some research. It's got quite a large following and is actually fairly decent. Works for a Spanish news outlet with quite a large, like 500,000 subscribers. He's got 250,000 subscribers as well, because I thought it was going to be like a Fachahez type situation, but actually, the journalist seemed pretty reasonable. Not one I've come across too much, so I don't know the credibility, but it was also reported in The Sun as well, and The Sun we need to instantly take with a pinch of salt as well. So there we go. Let me know what you think in the comments, right? Bullshit transfer story of the window so far. Does that trump Rafael Leao to Manchester United by Rudy Giletti? I'm thinking it does. I don't think there's any way, shape or form we've made a £78 million bid to Real Madrid for Tchouameni with nobody knowing about it. I think that's got to be a leading contender. Like the Rafael Leao links, we've had interest in him before. But that's got to be the winner for me. For me personally, Tchouameni to Manchester United having a bid rejected of £78 million is now bullshit transfer story of the window. Smash a like on the video if you agree with that. But that's you all up to date with the latest news and transfer updates. Don't forget, smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. See you in the next one.